Welcome to Bookworthy. Today, with the power of technology, Bookworthy is stretching across the pond to speak with the lovely Leah Boden. Leah's passion is helping women grow intellectually, spiritually, and holistically through her books and resources for women and homeschool families. Her latest book series is a series of 3 books called The Tales of Boldness and Faith, a series of fictionalized biographies for ages 8 to 12. Welcome to Bookworthy, Leah.
Hey, thank you for having me, Valerie.
It is a pleasure. So we're going to start with our random question of the week. And I was tempted to ask about the royal family and British foods, but I think I'll go with what is
It's not that interesting.
It's funny because over here it seems like it's very interesting. It's
really not. I mean, England is interesting, just not all that stuff yet. Yeah.
It's kind of like your own celebrity drama in a sense, but we'll kind of forgo those things and focus on what is a smell that brings back a fond memory.
I think I would have to say freshly cut grass, freshly mown grass is definitely the smell of kind of late spring, early summer here in England. And I live on a park. I literally there's a hedge between my house and a big city park. So they've just started doing the fresh spring cut with big machines, and that smell is just glorious, absolutely glorious. And fortunately this year I am not suffering from hay fever, from any allergies, so that is a blessing. I can enjoy the smell and not sneeze.
That is definitely a blessing for certain.
It is. Yes.
A hay fever and grass and all that is definitely a struggle of my family's. So,
yeah.
I love how smells do that. They bring back just this sense of, being connected to a memory and God and just how he likes to reach to us through all of our senses. And so that's really fun. Yeah. Well, Leah, why don't you tell us a little bit about this series of books?
Yeah, so The Tales of Boldness and Faith is a series that was inspired by books that I used to read to my children. My children are now all teenagers and adults. And when they were younger and I was beginning our home educating journey, where our big focus was on good literature and reading, I used to read to them these series of biographies that were kind of written in the 1940s, 1950s. And they were biographies, but they had a fictional twist to them. You could tell there was some kind of poetic license had been woven into the narrative, and we absolutely love them. And I have been a huge student and fan of Charlotte Mason's work, who's a revolutionary British educator from the late 1800s. And my first idea was to write a book about her. Talking that through with my literary agent, she said, great idea. Love it. Also, while you're thinking about this, make a list of 10 other people you might want to write about. I was like, okay, why not? So it started off being one idea of one book I felt very passionately about and wanted to write. And now I've had the privilege of partnering with Moody Publishers, and the first 3 in the series have come out this year. 2 are out at the moment. One is about Charlotte Mason, one is about C.S. Lewis, and the third one doesn't come out till August this summer, which is about Sarah Forbes Bonetta. They really are the foundation of the story is biographical, but then I have wanted to make this story come alive for the middle grade reader. So I've just used a little bit of to do that, which is so fun. I mean, it's really fun. So we've called them fictionalized biographies. I don't even know if we've made up that genre. I have seen it around, but that's what they are. So it's great fun.
I love that. I've read the first 2 about Charlotte Mason and C.S. Lewis, and it really has a Little Princess, a Little Women vibe to it that you're just immersed in a situation and feel like these people, that really did exist. They're not fictionalized, but
that's right.
To know them and to understand just how they walk through life, how their experiences changed who they were and how they saw God. And so it's really fun to read and kind of reminds me of some classics too.
That's great. Good to know.
Well, you kind of mentioned Charlotte Mason as one of the first people that you wanted to talk about. What about C.S. Lewis and I can't remember the third one?
Sarah Forbes Bonetta. Yeah, she's
Sarah Forbes Bonetta.
Lesser known, but yeah.
What about those characters or those people, not characters?
Yeah. I say characters too. Don't worry.
It's hard.
It's easily done.
So what about C.S. Lewis and Sarah Bonetta? Did you want to write about them?
Yeah. So, I had this list, I have this growing list actually of people that I wanted to write about and do want to write about. And I guess one of the questions at the beginning was, who goes first, who comes first? And we wanted people to complement Charlotte's story. So all these three that have come out first have a big part of their story set in Great Britain. So I am British, I am English. And so it was wonderful to be able to tell the story and the history and the narrative of the land that I've grown up in and loved and live in. And so these three worked well at this point. C.S. Lewis is loved by so many, young and old, and has this, and people are fascinated they're fascinated in him and about him for various reasons, everything from Narnia through to his theology and his salvation story and everything in between, the romanticizing of Oxford and all the lovely things. And so I thought, I've studied his work personally had my own study of his work, and then began to read about what people had written about him, reading about the biographies. And I just was totally immersed in that, loved that story. And so the real question with Lewis was, or Jack as we call him all the way through the books, that was what he wanted to be called, was what element do we share? So I had to, the book is called The Story Formed Life of C.S. Lewis, and his life was very much formed by imagination, whimsy, story, and then ultimately the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which transformed his life. And so what I did was took and learn about many, many books that he read and enjoyed, and some were just fun and others really formed who he was, and tied those into the chapters. So there was a really amazing book to write. Sarah Forbes Bonetta, my youngest daughter and I, quite a few years ago now, discovered a biography about her at Her Majesty's Service, I believe it was called. And Sarah Forbes Bonetta was born in West Africa, and her family were caught up in a raid by a slave trader king called Gazo. And very, very traumatic beginning to her young life, and ended up being captured. And the story is it's a real redemption story, but there's tons of history in there. And it was really important to me to tell the real story. I really dug deep into what was going on here. And one of the Queen's captains, who was an abolitionist, was out there trying to contend with this king. And the story goes that this king in West Africa gave Sarah Forbes Bonetta to the captain to take back to the Queen and say, give this girl as my gift. Which is crazy for us to think about, even to consider. But the history books tell us this happened and this is true. So the story that I've written is about a young girl who didn't have much choice in this displacement and this complete uprooting, but ended up in England. And didn't just end up in England in some home and was just kind of caught up in a system, but she ended up in England and under the care of Queen Victoria, of all people. And what we know of Ina was her African name. So I refer to both those, Sarah and Ina. But what they saw on her is that she had royal markings. She had markings on the skin. And so they knew she came from royalty. And the interesting thing is what a lot of colonialism and trying to, bringing children and men and women out of slavery and out of these entrapped situations, but then wanting to anglicize them through and through. So she was baptized, given an English name. And what's interesting is that Ina means royalty, born of royalty, and Sarah means princess, means royalty as well. So a big part of her story that I try to tell is that even though so much was out of her control, her identity remained the same, and that God intended her to be called royal, as we all are, as men and women of Christ. But that remained the same through her story. And I won't tell the whole thing because I want people to read it. when I read that story to my daughter, we were both really, really moved, and it stayed with us. There was something, I'd never read it before, never heard of her before, even though she marked part of British history and English history. So as soon as I had the opportunity, I knew, I actually want to write her story. This is an important story to write. So yeah, and I'm thrilled that I got to do that. And her story needs to be told. It needs to be made known, and because there's so much attached to it, and in all three of the stories, there are these themes of displacement and grief, and there's a lot of sadness, and I don't shy away from the hard stuff, even though these books are for children, but I do bring the redemption story through, and the story of hope and community and kindness, and that all comes through as well. So they weren't, well, you've read two of them, but they weren't these kind of like fairy tale books to write. I was dealing with some hard stuff, Valerie. I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, sometimes during the editing, I was in tears, and how do I do this? This is, especially with Sarah's story, some parts are heart aching. So I hope that, obviously my heart is to share these real stories with families that will hopefully learn from them, as well as be inspired by their lives.
I love the story of these three men and women, because they each, like you said, they didn't experience a perfect life. It was hard. It was rough. It was seeing both sides of two different cultures, in a sense, a culture without Christianity and a culture with, and like all three of them, which is very unique. But what I love is, for this middle grade age, that 8 to 12, they're really trying to decide, who am I? What am I? What do I believe about myself? And I love that these three characters go through that journey that we all do. I mean, I was in tears in, Charlotte Mason's story, because it's just a story of belonging to God, and to know that our value, our purpose is all wrapped up in who God made us to be, not in what society says about us or our circumstances. And those are just core things that the little child inside of us needs just as much as the children's lives.
And beyond, not beyond that as an addition, but alongside that, all three of the stories, what I find moving, even just writing them, researching. I do apologise. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
I don't know if you edit your podcast.
I do, so you're fine.
I turned everything off. Sorry about that. Let me just make sure that doesn't come up. So what I found as well in discovering these stories, and in really just kind of enveloping myself in them, is that the relationships they had and the people that they brought around them were key, just as we know, as being part of the body of Christ. So in all of three of these stories, I think what's moving is the impact of their life on other people, or how they relate to others. So you'll read in Sarah's story, she has these real female mentors in her life, and these are the kind of thematic through her stories, that there's a woman at each stage of her life, even though her biological parents had died, God brought alongside her these incredible women to help form and shape who God had made her to be. And we see that in Charlotte. She never married, never had children. She was pretty much alone, but she had these incredible people around her. So much so that there's this woman, Elsie Kitchen, who, after Charlotte died, says, I want to serve this woman in life and death. So when I die, I want you to put my gravestone at the foot of her gravestone so people can stand on it to look at her gravestone. And I've stood on it, Valerie, many a time. I've stood on that gravestone, and it's powerful that you think, do we have relationships like that? That actually, that's moving, isn't it? And we see that in connections and friendships and relationships that C.S. Lewis had, like with people like Tolkien. And it's just amazing that we get to do our journey with each other. And I hope children capture that as well.
I love that too. Just, how the impact we can have on the people around us. Because Sarah, Charlotte, and C.S. Lewis, or Jack, they all didn't really set out to change the world, but they did through their actions and how they treated the people around them, how they interacted and encouraged. And, it's one of those, I love books, so many wonderful books out there, but to know that these people were people they were real people. These are not fictionalized characters. They are real men and women that walk through similar stories that we go through. And it's powerful to walk through biographies and to see people like, oh, they are struggling alongside me. And even when we look at the Bible, we're looking at, David and Paul and Peter and like relating to these people and being like, okay, so even though I could be a loudmouth, I could still be a leader too.
Right. Peter. Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's really powerful what you've done with these books, just to help kids see real people walking through hard times as well as finding faith in those hard times too. Because that's when you grow up in a Christian home, a lot of times you're like, okay, but when hard times come, you're like, that really shakes your faith. And to really be like, do I really believe what I've been taught? And I love that you get to walk with these biographies and do the same thing with these men and women that have gone before them. It's really powerful. Now, Leah, did you always want to be a writer?
I don't know. When I was a child, I was a big reader and I was a journaler. I used to journal and do diaries. And I used to write poetry. I wrote poetry in childhood, in my teen years. I still write poetry. I just don't share it very often. Someday, when the time is right, that will be a genre that I jump into. Yeah. It is. It is a really personal thing. And also just, I'm self-taught really. So, you just want to be able to form that. So I was immersed in all that. My mother and both parents, big readers. I always had lots of books in the house. But I don't know if nobody ever said you could become a writer. Like I didn't know any writers, didn't know any authors. I didn't know anybody I had a cousin who went into journalism, but it wasn't part of that dreaming. Like I want to be a writer one day. And I don't know if I put myself in that category. I just enjoyed reading books. So no, it probably wasn't until I was in my, I want to say, definitely into childbearing and rearing years that I considered, maybe this could be part of my life. It was like a little thing that would regularly be on my mind. And then it would be something that I could sense, in a spiritual way. It was something that was on my heart to do, but I didn't know in what way. So when something, when something, you can't shake it. That's how I describe it. Like I would wake up thinking, I just need to write today. I need to write. But it wasn't until, 5-6 years ago that I even considered a publishing journey at all. So I just knew I need to get some words down. And so that really grew in me. Part of my undergrad was English literature. So words have always been a great passion of mine. Yeah. That's a really long-winded answer, wasn't it?
It's a good answer. It shows passion. That's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Leah, what is a book that has impacted your life a lot other than the Bible?
Well done for throwing that in. Yes, the Bible. I mean, there are many. I know it's like an easy thing to say, but when you've been reading voraciously for most of your reading life, your ability, then there are many, many books. I love anything by Wendell Berry, and his books always stay with me. And one of his books, which is part of the Port William series, is called Hannah Coulter, and the Coulters are a family of people that he writes about. But he's a male author, obviously he's a man, but he's writing the book as her, and it is incredible. You forget that he's writing as her, but there's this powerful story of a wife and a mother that is, it's just so moving. I've read it quite a few times. I've read it in the book club that I lead. And it's a international book club, so we're all on Zoom, and you've got us all like weeping and reading bits out, and it's just really incredible. So if you haven't read Wendell Berry, for the listeners, and you love reading, then I'd encourage you to jump in. Jaber Crow, Hannah Coulter, they're two of my favourites. But I think they are the ones. There are many, many books, but they are a few that have stuck with me.
Those are really sweet. I'll have to add them to my TBR for sure.
Yes, you must, yes.
Well, what can we expect next from you, Leah?
Well, hopefully, Valerie, more of the same. That's what we're working towards. I haven't started anything yet. I've got my next 3 ideas of the people that I'd like to introduce to children. So hopefully more of the same for now. And obviously, Ina's book comes out in August, and then watch out. Who knows? I might get some poetry out there.
I'll be watching out for that for sure.
You do that.
Well, Leah, where can people find out more about you and your books?
I'm really easy to find, actually. LeahBoden.com. I did well on the whole domain name there. So LeahBoden.com, or my kind of tag name on Instagram and everywhere else as well is Modern Miss Mason. Also the title of my first book. So modernmissmason.com or leahboden.com all send you to the same place. The 2 places that I'm on most of the time are Instagram, which is Modern Miss Mason, and Substack is where I host my online community, which is called the Collective Community. And so that's a growing global online community where we read together. I do workshops and coaching and all that kind of stuff. But you can find out all about that on my website.
Oh, wonderful. I'll make sure to have those links in the descriptions for sure.
Thank
you for joining me today, Leah.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
And thank you for joining Leah and me on this episode of the Bookworthy Podcast. Check the show notes for any books or links that we discussed, and let us know in the comments what is a smell that brings back fond memories for you. And be sure to like and subscribe to discover more great books together. Happy reading!